This meeting is being recorded.
Great. All right, well, I think we can get started. Again, great to see everyone. Happy Monday. This is the Southern Vermont New Vermonters Provider Network meeting. The focus this month is going to be on workforce development, something near and dear to my heart because it's kind of how I cut my teeth in this work. But before we get started sharing about that and hearing from some of our other workforce partners, I'm wondering, Joe, who I see, if you want to provide just an update on how things are going, anything that is relevant to the general provider community. Love to hear it. Thanks.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to be brief just to give you an update on our arrivals. It's been a little slow since December, but we are seeing 15 arrivals from January. We don't know when people will be arriving, the particular date, but we're hoping that from January going forward, probably February or March, people will start arriving. So right now we have 15 individuals, 10 from Eritrea. Of the 10 from Eritrea, we have one single male, a family of 3, a family of 4, a single mom with a child. And we also have 5 arrivals from Afghanistan. Will be 2 single male, 1 couple, and a single mom. So that's basically 15 individuals will be arriving from both Afghanistan and Eritrea between January and whatever time is given to us. That's it from my end. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. I also saw Tracy Dolan. I don't want to throw you under the bus because I didn't, ask ahead of time, but if there's anything you'd like to share about what's happening statewide, please feel free to do so.
Sure. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate being on this call. Statewide, just a reminder, we now have 4 sites that are approved as resettlement sites in Vermont. So we have Brattleboro, Bennington, Colchester, and Rutland. And so as arrivals come, those are the areas that generally they will be assigned to. And like Joe said, normally in the resettlement cycle, early in the fiscal year, things are a little bit slower and they tend to pick up. And the fourth quarter tends to get very busy. So you'll probably see a little bit of a lopsided arrival. So you'll expect spring, summer to actually get quite a bit busier. One other update I wanted to share, my office gets refugee resettlement funds that look like support services, so refugee support service funding. And I put out an RFP last month asking for applications from providers who are able to provide support services, and they're very specific. They tend to be around employment, ELL, and case management, but there are some other services that are available. And that money comes from the feds, and I put it out, and then people apply for it. And so those decisions have been made, and I'm putting out notes today around exactly how much. So people applied for a variety of amounts, and in some cases we were able to fund all of it, in some cases part of it. It was a little trickier this year. The way the funding formula works, the feds look back to see how many have come, and that's how much they determine in terms of funding. So last year we got a lot of Afghan humanitarian parolees, but we got a small number, about 90 of refugees overall in Vermont. So they base our number, our formula, based on what we got last year. This year, of course, we expect to get a lot more, hopefully. But unfortunately, the funding doesn't necessarily catch up. So sometimes we have years where we'll actually get less money than people that we have. And so those can be tough years. We have plenty of Afghan money. And when I say plenty, I mean enough to serve the Afghans. But serving new refugees gets a little trickier. Hopefully this year, we will see possibly Congress with the continuing resolution make an adjustment to the amount of money states are going to get because of that gap, where people actually expect a lot this year, but based on the formula, might not get as much. I think that's about all I have. And Ukrainians, just to remind you that Ukrainians continue to arrive. I don't think you're getting a lot in your region. They tend to be more central and northern arriving, but we have, I think, about 115 that are slotted to arrive. We think we have about 60 or 70 Ukrainians here. Thank you.
Alice, can I just make one addition?
Yeah,
Just for the team to know that we have legal support services here for our folks. Of the 44 cases we have for adjustment of status, we have submitted. We have only 7 to be submitted. The rest of the cases have been submitted, and we're still waiting for adjudication. And so we want to ask our partners here, because we sometimes see arrivals, people moving from other states coming to the region. Please, if they approach you to come to the region, contact us. Because what we are saying that sometimes people come in, we don't know what their legal status are, and then we start the process all over. So if any of the arrivals coming through the state are coming through either a sponsor group or co-sponsor group or any volunteer group, please contact us before they leave. Thank you.
great. Thank you so much for that reminder, Joe. Yeah, so you cannot assume that if you're working with a refugee or an asylum seeker that they have already been in contact with our refugee support and our asylum seeker support organization. So that's really important just to check when you're working with them, whatever your program or service might be, or how you're engaging with these folks. Because again, these are the organizations also that Tracy mentioned receive support financially from the federal government to engage and support with these folks. So we're trying to build a system, and we want to make sure the folks who are eligible to benefit from it are part of it and all of that. So without further ado, I want to transition to our topic of conversation for the day. And similarly with all of the services we've talked about in the past, employment services are out there, they exist. We have a great network of folks doing this work, and you can refer folks to these services, and you can encourage them to make sure that even if they seem like they have a job or are working their way to a job, that they're engaged with the kinds of organizations here to support them getting to that job, keeping that job, finding their next better job. And so that's something that we all as a community, those are supports we all provide. And so what I would love to start with is our state partners. So we have folks from Department of Labor and Hireability on the call. I think perhaps we can start with our folks from Department of Labor. I see there's a few of you, I don't know who wants to start, but really share with folks, what are the broad overview, what do you offer all Vermonters that everyone should know about, but also what maybe have you seen our new Vermonter community really engaging with, in your offices?
Good morning. I'm Danielle. Danielle Kane from I actually work in the Northwest, and I've been down here for the last 11 months providing support to the Southeast region, but I will let you all know that this is my last week, and Christy Pratt, who is also on the call, is the new regional manager for this area. So she will be your contact person as we move forward. So I welcome her and introduce her to all of you. And I also want to say a huge thank you to all of you for making my time here wonderful. And it's been great to meet you all and to work with you in such an important role. So what do we do? So at the Department of Labor, we work with anyone who is interested in looking for employment, and we provide some basic services, which is applying for jobs, completing applications, submitting them, doing a simple job search, faxing, scanning, sending documents to individuals, as well as providing some more intense services. And this is really kind of where the bulk of our work comes to play. We receive federal funding from the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And this has been a huge piece, a huge component of how we've been providing support to individuals, as well as the new Americans and the asylum seekers that are located in this area. We have worked extremely closely with BDCC as well as ECDC to connect with every new American who from Afghanistan who has come to the area to make sure that they are enrolled in WEO so that we can provide those intensive employment services as well as to provide support services. So that's a big piece of what we do is making sure that we review and work to overcome barriers that individuals have to employment. So for example, we've been working with folks to get their permit, as well as their driver's licenses. But it's not something that's as simple as just getting a permit and getting your driver's license. We've been working with our community partners to ensure that we have interpreters and that we have driving schools that are available who are willing to work with individuals who need interpreters, as well as work outside of the schedule that they have to provide them those services. So we have a driver's school that we're working with that comes to the local area on the weekend and will provide driver's education to the new Americans so that they can work towards getting that driver's license. Specifically, we've had women who haven't had any exposure to driving. A lot of the men have had experience driving in Afghanistan. So we've been working with women specifically, as well as anyone else who needs it. So we have an ongoing class that takes place. And the referral for that is through ECDC, through the Multicultural Center with Jill and Ursula. We also work with Amir and Abdul, Amir from BDCC and Abdul from ECDC to make sure that we're meeting folks at the Multicultural Center and completing those intakes and identifying those barriers, such as the need for car insurance once they've established and earned their permit and their driver's license. We've done some support with vehicle repairs. Once they have purchased a vehicle, we can spend a certain amount of funds through our WIOA funding for that. We do clothing. So for individuals who have been working with some of the local employers, we've been able to expend some money so that they can go and get steel-toed boots or outdoor gear so that they are safe and comfortable while they're working. There's some housing support that we can provide if need be, some childcare support that exists. It's not as simple as, just saying child support. There are some guidelines that we have to follow, of course. But again, these are all things that are available to individuals that are working with us in the WIOA program.
Excellent. Thank you so much for a fantastic overview. So I hope some of the other providers on the call have heard that ICE provides some of these services too, or this is something that I know my client needs and I can't get, or I didn't know were available through Department of Labor. So, and it was mentioned, our belief is that every person we bump into, we encourage them to enroll in WIOA. Because again, once labor has a chance to meet with them, it's much easier to identify what is labor's way to support them and how does that mesh with the services you may be providing them.
And that's the beauty of it, is that we partner with Hireability. We've been partnering with BDCC, and what that does is that extends those services. So we may have a cap, a maximum as to what we can spend, but when we mesh everything together, instead of providing 1 month or a month and a half to 2 months of services, we're able to provide 3 to 4 months of support to the individual, which is, as you can imagine, it goes a long way, especially when you're faced with the new experiences that the folks are faced with, and any help that they can get with overcoming barriers is much appreciated.
Great, thank you. And so there was a question around, access to these services in Bennington County. I do see some folks from the Department of Labor in Bennington. I don't know, Wendy, if you want to chime in, but generally speaking, these are services available to all Vermonters. WIO is a federal program, and folks should be able to go to their local Department of Labor in person or virtually and start enrollment in WIOA, or being assigned a case manager to start that process. Is that largely correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Danielle actually did a great summary of Department of Labor services, and it would be exactly the same on this end, this side of the mountain too.
Great, thank you. I thought I saw a hand briefly go ahead.
Oh.
Yep.
I just wanted to just jump in. So the only difference in the way that we are connecting with Department of Labor here in Bennington is that we don't have that multicultural community center where our clients are directly meeting with Department of Labor on a regular basis at this time.
Correct. Sorry. Thank you.
So Alex, many of them are meeting with Department of Labor at the tutorial center, but specifically, Kate mentioned something that I think is absolutely awesome, which is that there is a driving school that has been actually contracted to help people, whereas as far as I know, that has not happened on this side of the state. It's driving ed is few and far between over here.
أجل ديبارتمنت الليبر مخير.
That's not me.
Yeah, sorry. Yep, no worries. Yeah, so I mean, beyond WIOA, Department of Labor are great partners for trainings. And that's something that I'll talk about kind of towards the end, is that whether they have training providers they've worked with for many years around, you name it, they're not just the funders through WIOA. They often know, have the history of what training providers are willing to come from Rutland to Bennington to do a thing, or which ones are eligible to receive support from Department of Labor. So those are other opportunities to partner with labor, not just at the client level, but also perhaps at, at that level of how do we get something going here in our community. Great. Unless there's any other comments on Department of Labor, hireability is another great workforce development resource we have in our region. And so whomever from hireability wants to chime in, that'd be great.
I'm here. This is Nancy Dwyer. I'm the regional manager for hireability, and I will introduce my colleague, Collier Shutter, who is our new business account manager, and he can tell you a little bit about what he does, but he works very closely with us in terms of business outreach and developing those relationships. So hireability is a state state division, and we are under the Department of the Division of Aging and Disability. So where we differ slightly from Department of Labor is that the eligibility for our services is connected to a disability related barrier. So this could be mental health issues, this could be physical disabilities, this could be learning disabilities, and we tend to interpret that pretty broadly. So most everybody who comes through our door, we are able to find eligible. And I think particularly for folks coming from Afghanistan or other refugees, they may come from countries where disability is either not a factor or it's just not something that people consider. So we really try to work with people around that piece and try to figure out how to get them eligible, and so that they don't have too many hoops to jump through. So our services, like Department of Labor's, are really centered around helping people to get employment, and in particular to assist people to think about, in the future, getting higher wage jobs and what kind of training or education they might need to do that, so that hopefully by the time that they're finished with us, they're really well on their way to being very self-sufficient. So we weave services a lot with Department of Labor. We have a hireability office in Bennington, and so those services are the same in Bennington. In Brattleboro, we have a counselor that's really sort of the point person for our office. Some of you have been in contact with him. His name is Leo Schiff. And so he's sort of the point person for people who would like to would like more information or would like to make a referral. So usually when we get started with people, we, if they need assistance finding employment, we're able to connect them with an employment consultant who may help with a resume, may help with other aspects and to help them get employed. And then longer term, we work with people. All our services are provided within context of an employment plan. So to reach those goals, we'll often do some assessments, sort of interest assessments, other kinds of assessments. We may give people an opportunity to try something out, to have an informational interview, to shadow somebody doing the type of work that they're interested. So there's a whole range of really individualized services that we can offer for people. And then our goal is really to help them get employed in better jobs and to get the training and education that they need to be able to do that. So I'm going to put Collier on the spot here. If you can just sort of tell sort of where you fit into this puzzle. We work closely together with Weber, and Collier is one of our close partners.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Collier Shutter. I'm the business account manager with Weber in Brattleboro. I'm out of the hireability office, and most of my outreach is driven by the caseload for the hireability counselors. That said, I serve our partners in the community for business outreach. That is almost exclusively what I do. For example, I'm working with Abdul at ECDC with an employer right now, and I worked with Vermont Adult Learning for some outreach for a few people. And generally what I'm doing is going out in the community and finding opportunities for employment. And because the New American caseload is fairly new to the hireability office, I'm just kind of now experiencing that. And part of my conversation when I go out there now is, will you hire New Americans? Is English a barrier you can overcome? Those questions. So I'm trying to find where those opportunities are for the New Americans coming in, where they're being hired en masse. So if there's an opportunity for one individual to translate for the others, I can present that to our team. And yeah, I mean, besides that, I plan on putting together some trainings, vocational trainings, career fairs in the future. But basically, I'm here at your disposal to reach out to businesses and partner with them to put people in jobs.
Great. Thank you so much, Collier. Yeah, and I'll share more about what we do at the BDCC, but I think something we share is that when you're working with employers, it's really important to have someone who they can call, like Collier or Abdul or Amir, about when there may be more communication needed around a specific barrier. And you need someone who's on your team and on that person's team. And that's why, you know, I think Weber provides a really great resource as being someone that employers can work with directly around, whether it's an individual, a specific population, and build that relationship to problem solve, which is what we're all doing all the time in the workplace. So thanks for that. Let's see if we have any other folks. If there's anyone from the Weber on the other side, but seeing no further comments on that, I wanted to briefly share what the BDCC and ECDC are doing around employment, so that folks have a bigger understanding about the system that we're trying to build, and so that as service providers, you may be involved or refer to someone at any point from a number of different people to engage in this. And so I will try and share my slideshow. And I'll make the first section as brief as I can. And so working, can folks see the slide? Is thumbs up, nods? Great. So, you know, the BDCC has been a workforce development provider for many years now. And, you know, over the last 3 years plus, we've really focused on increasing the size and quality of our workforce, and in what's requisite in that is supporting what we call a 21st century workforce, which we know that outside of Vermont and outside of New England, generally, our labor market is far more diverse, and it's made up of a variety of folks from different backgrounds. And so that is how we started, and found our role in supporting refugee resettlement and immigration in general coming to our region. Just some of our, broad overview of some of our goals. Again, what we're doing right now is this third one, new systems and opportunities, creating a meeting like this, bringing folks together so that we all understand how things work is part of the role that we are really playing or hoping to play. But really what this system consists of is, a really close coordination and collaboration between ECDC, CAST, which is our asylum seeker group, and our employment staff here at the BACC. And so just so everyone understands the partners and the roles, you've heard the mention of Abdul. I don't know if he's still on the call. I know, so Abdul and Amir, we have a number of folks starting their first day at a local employer, and their time is more valuable than mine these days. And so they are doing that, onboarding these folks. So I'll share a bit about what their roles are. But Abdul works for ECDC. He is their employment services point of contact. He does a lot of the initial intake. When folks are first arriving, they're meeting directly with Abdul. A similar position exists at CAST, the asylum seekers group. Dora is their case manager, and also provides that employment support. And then there's the BDCC. Amir Samar is our workforce project manager. He works really closely with Abdul to really gather the information that he's collected and start looking for what's the best opportunities and ways to support folks as they look to enter the workforce. We also are the lead interface between employers and new Vermonters, but also employers and the resources and training they might need to better support a more diverse workforce. So what I'll share is, it may be slightly outdated, but generally speaking, our intake process is a close collaboration between ECDC and the BDCC. And so again, as folks begin arriving, we have this initial intake when folks are meeting with their case managers, they're getting their medical appointments scheduled, they're doing all of that really important initial arrival stuff. And part of that is an assessment around their past careers and skills, and they have a long-term self-sufficiency plan that they start. What are some of their longer-term goals in becoming economically self-sufficient? This is also, between this process and this initial intake is where you as service providers may see referrals really start coming in. When someone has their first medical exam or a full physical, and it's identified that this person may have a physical barrier to employment. And that is when a referral to a place like Higher Ability may be initially made. WEO enrollment, it's built into our system. It's something that we really believe folks, all arrivals should really experience right away so that they know what's available, and we're making sure folks have the resources they need to start. And then once we have a lot of this information, we know folks feel that they're ready to work, and we know what that would look like. That is when the BDCC starts engaging directly with employers. Well, we engage with them well before this, and I'll get into some of those opportunities, but start setting up site visits, job tours, connecting, making sure we have interpreters available for interviews and onboarding and the paperwork, and really helping an employer sort out the logistics of what happens if you're ready to hire 5 new Vermonters, but they're from, they speak a language you have no experience working with. How does an employer do that successfully? That's when a lot of the work transitions from being very case management focused to being cohort driven and working directly with employers. And then as folks are on the job, it's this big cycle, as we know. A lot of our case management is that, you know, as people are maybe more comfortable, or if they experience other different new barriers, you know, it's really with Abdul and Amir being that point of contact for both the job seeker or the employee and the employer, for someone to say, hey, you know, something isn't working out, or hey, I'd like to give this person a promotion, but I don't know how to, you know, communicate that well. You know, so there's a lot of HR support that we can provide even after people are on the job. And then additional training and education. How does someone who feels like they're ready for the next opportunity access that opportunity? And as a part of this, you know, standing operating procedure, we list the partners that we work with most closely, and that we really, you know, and if there's things you think are missing, I you know, please feel free to send them our way. But this is how, you know, we welcome folks into the system. And, you know, we've been thinking a lot about this and working really hard with ECDC on it. And so that, again, if you encounter someone who it seems like maybe they haven't received some of this workforce support, or they just found a job and took it without knowing more, you can refer them to ECDC or to Amir. You know, that, again, every door is the right door. We really want to make sure everyone's aware of the resources available to them. All right. Okay, that should be fixed. So the things that we do directly with employers, we have free equity and inclusivity trainings. We did 2 last year. We're planning to do another one this year for all folks who identify as, you know, having a diverse background, BIPOC Vermonters, and those with an immigrant background. That, you know, we're again inclusive of all the different folks we hope to see in our workplaces. Immigration and non-discrimination law. You know, we have a New Vermonters in the Workplace webinar that we do, you know, quarterly almost at this point. And that's really providing some of that background information that, you know, when someone fills out an I-9, here's what's acceptable documentation. And here's what is an unacceptable question to ask your employees perhaps around their documentation. Also, you know, small tips like, you know, Google Translate is your friend. You know, don't be too afraid of miscommunication, because not trying is the way is a certain way that you won't communicate what you feel needs to be communicated. So a good effort is always appreciated when you're trying to work as a team at a place of employment. Again, I mentioned facilitating tours, help ensure that job postings are reaching the community that you want them to reach. And then recruitment, you know, you know, employers, we have an intake form for employers, and they can really articulate what their opportunities are, the kinds of folks that they think would thrive in their workplace. And then we can try and see who has the right skills for this opportunity. Last and certainly not least, we provide connection to language support partners. So whether that's an interpreter, translating materials, or it is working with them to bring one of our ELL providers on site, or to create a class specifically for their workplace. These are all things that we can really help employers think through, because many of them probably have not had a multilingual or an English learning employment base. So the things that we do for our job seekers really starts, I would say, after they've landed their first job, and is really looking at this long-term career and education plans and goals that they may have. Jessica, if you have a hand, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you guys work with our clients on like understanding workplace norms in America, or if that's something that Abdul typically does.
Yeah, so that is something that we are working on solidifying more. So the short answer is yes, to the extent, you know, to the extent that folks engage in these workshops that when we have them at the MCC, but also, and something I'll get to with this pathways development, is we're working closely with World Learning to develop and articulate some really industry specific language courses. And a part of that is going to be the cultural orientation component of going to the workplace. So learning appropriate, I don't necessarily want to say behavior, but like language and the norms of a workplace are something that, yes, we see as a need. And we learn the hard way. You know, this is the thing that like, this is why I'll reemphasize the importance of having good relationships with our HR teams and our case managers and everyone involved, because miscommunications will happen. It's 100% certain. It's how do we work and learn from those and move forward from them. But it's a great question. Tracy.
Yeah, I was wondering, I'm looking at, I've had a few proposals come in from kind of educational organizations who are interested in doing some sort of advising and financial aid navigating with folks, but I don't know what the demand is. What has your sense been with the folks who have arrived so far in your region, with the demand for wanting to look into higher education, especially when it's not necessarily covered, right? So the advising would be covered and the navigating financial aid, but there isn't necessarily a separate pot of money that would allow people to pursue higher education for free.
Absolutely. If anyone wants to join an additional group of meetings, we actually just started a post-secondary education pathways cohort. So we have folks, and I think I saw Lee Markey join. Great to see you, Lee. Of folks from CCV and Greenfield Community College, from VSAC, and other funders to really help articulate what is that pathway to higher education, and is it needed? You know, we've had an individual say, I need to get my master's in he has a master's in business finance, and he believed that he needed his PhD in order to get a good job here in Vermont. And so as part of that was educating that unless you want to teach economics and finance, you don't need a PhD particularly. And that, you know, in Vermont, different credentials and different skill sets have different values there. Whereas if you wanted to move to New York City, we'd say, let's plan for that. So the short answer is slowly but surely, we're seeing a growing demand for this. We've got the folks, the folks who, when they first arrived, they just said, give me any job. I need to send money home for my family tomorrow. And now that they've been working in a job for almost a year, and they say, well, I've been here for a year and I haven't gotten a raise yet, or I haven't been empowered with more responsibilities on the job. And so now they're saying, okay, we want to take a CDL class, or health careers is another good example. And so we're just starting to put together those pathways. And in, you know, some training providers can be funded through WIOA. Some of them can be funded through VSAC, which is, you know, quite generous in terms of the higher education resources available. But if we're talking about someone pursuing a full 2 or 4 year degree, those are funding gaps that we see right now. But so it's few and far between. I don't know if that's a great answer, but
that was actually really helpful context. Just in a concrete way, would you say you've got maybe 10 clients who are interested in looking, navigating post-secondary right now, or further education right now?
Yeah, I mean, we have at least
just to give me a sense.
Yeah, I mean, we have at least 3 or 4 individuals who are currently enrolled in CCV or Greenfield Community College. So, you know, in the totality of all the folks we're working with, I would say there are definitely at least 10 individuals who would want post-secondary education, right? So I don't know if it's 2-year or 4-year degrees.
There is a lot in my experience with our clients, especially the younger women.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
Yes, I just want to add. So Tracy, to what Alice was saying, we start to see the slow demand, and it's increasing. You know, those who are interested in post secondary education. From ECDC, also as of January, we're going to have on our staff, maybe the person will work with both BDCC and other partners. That person's role is going to be university relation coordinator. And that person will look into some of these demands and also continue to build relationship with universities. So we will give you guys more details, and we will work with some of our partners what our road is going to be, because we really have seen the demand is slowly growing, and we need to separate that from the regular deployment. So we will have that present in our staff.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I just
Nancy,
wanted,
go ahead.
Nancy Dwyer, I just wanted to add that Hireability has a statewide 5-year grant. It is called Vermont Career Advancement Project. We have hired specific career pathway navigators as part of this grant. And those folks will be working with people who are interested in continuing education and training toward an industry credential. So we have a lot of partners in this, VDOL and CCV, but that is a specific program that Hireability has, and we have some more resources that could be used to assist people toward working toward those credentials. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. And we have a career pathway navigator in Brattleboro, and I believe the Bennington office has a career pathway navigator as well. As a result,
Nancy, can I ask a quick follow-up? For
Sure.
folks who are, for refugees who arrive here, some of them do come from challenging situations. All of them come from challenging situations, but do they need to be diagnosed? So we know that there's a lot of stress or post-traumatic stress for folks coming here. Do they need to have that diagnosis? Because we tend to have sometimes in the refugee population, people who it may take them a long time to get a mental health appointment, or they may not be seeking it in that way. Would they need to be diagnosed in order to be referred to Hireability? Or is there a more informal way to say, this person's having challenges, we can refer? Because you have a lot of resources.
right.
And I wonder sometimes if we're hung up on a diagnosis.
Yeah, no, we don't need a specific diagnosis. As I said, we try to interpret eligibility pretty broadly, and in talking with our central office about that, we can assume that many of these people have had some kind of trauma just because of their situation. And so we do have, we have the capability of having them sort of have a pre-eligibility meeting with the employee assistance programs. They have trained master's level counselors. We also have master's level counselors who can, based on their credentials and their education. So we try not to make that a major barrier. If somebody's connected with a physician or a mental health provider, we would try to get some information from them. But we really try to not have that be a major barrier for somebody.
That's great. Just one of the long-term goals, just for everyone on the call, of refugee resettlement is to ultimately connect refugees eventually to existing services that are stood up for any Vermonter. And so just a real shout out to Hireability to really encourage folks on the phone to refer to Hireability. That's a nice example of an existing service that does have the capacity to support. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and so, you know, the pathways we're working on now are not 2 or 4 year degrees focused at the moment. We are working on early childhood education, a pathway for folks there. We have some folks enrolled in the Career Center construction course that's going really well, and we're preparing to launch an ELL-based CDL class in the start of the new year. And one of the reasons why that we're focusing on some of these is one, that they are generally high wage jobs, but the other is that they are post-secondary credentials or certifications that organizations like Labor, Hireability, and others have funding for. So again, when we're talking about attending a 2-year or a 4-year college, the order of magnitude with regards to the amount of resources an individual needs to succeed there, assuming they don't have a full scholarship, is really exceptional. And so I think that what we know to be true is that these are careers in which the education that is required is serviceable, generally no debt, and to enter a high wage job. And so those are some of the more immediate calculations that we're really looking at, is that making sure no one's leaving their educational opportunities with debt, if we can avoid it, for their first or second careers. And then really when folks have, when they're earning income and they can, look at, the finances behind pursuing additional college, that is why we have that post-secondary education pathways, group to really look at what's available there. We're also partnered with the World Education Service, which is a national or international organization to help with credential evaluation. So if you've heard of someone who believes that they have, received a 2 or 4 year degree in their home country, but it may not be recognized here, you should refer them to us directly, because we can have that credential evaluated. And what that looks like is it'll come back, and if they're eligible, it'll say, this is similar to an accredited institution in your region. So, their degree is as good as any 2 or 4 year degree from a collegiate institution in your region. And we're also, part of learning about how to do this differently and better through this partnership with the World Education Service. So we're part of a learning cohort. Amir, Abdul, and myself, we all went to DC a few weeks ago to really learn about how do other places do it? How can we be doing this work better? And then last but certainly not least, again, I'll say, it's all about navigating and referrals and navigating this, what may seem like a complex workforce development system that is somewhat unique to Vermont in that we don't have workforce development boards. There's no central one entity or institution responsible for this. And so it takes a village. It will probably rely on all of the resources we have available to get folks through, a nursing degree program, or through the CDL course, or this early childhood education pathway we're designing includes all the wraparound services that you folks are regularly providing for the folks you're working with. Tim, I see a hand.
Thanks, Alex. I know this has been sort of referenced just in passing, and I don't see anyone from VSAC on the call, but maybe I'm missing them. If I am, apologies, but just wanted to also plug VSAC, and in particular their Vermont advancement grants for folks that, at least for those new Americans who have been in Vermont for at least a year. Now, that's something that is a bit of a barrier. There is a bit of a time lag, but once folks have been in Vermont for a year, they become eligible for some VSAC advancement grants. And I know that they're very happy to talk folks through that, but just wanted to flag that as an additional resource. Of course, ideally, it would be ideal, of course, if new arrivals were immediately eligible. But I think that's a separate, that's a separate advocacy piece. I think that doesn't need to sit here for now, but just wanted to flag that as a potential resource.
Yes, absolutely. And what I've learned in doing this work is that there is, in fact, a hierarchy of funding. And I think Megan just mentioned that the advancement grants year residency doesn't apply for some programs. It doesn't, and Megan referenced CCV, which I believe to be true. I think it's the funds that came from ARPA and or COVID dollars, these 802 advancement and 802 opportunity grants. Those are the ones that have been waived for refugees and new Vermonters, but those are with specific state college institutions. And one thing I was just saying is that, our goal is really to ensure folks are aware of all of the resources when they're thinking about a training. And that is part of the work that we're doing and building into these pathways, is that, when you apply for funding for an industry recognized credential or for a training, you should meet with VSAC and see what resources are available to you. And then what isn't covered by VSAC may be covered by WIOA or or higher ability. And so that there is a method to the variety of funding opportunities. And again, the solution to that is make the referral. You know, the sooner someone talks with Susie Wagner from VSAC, the sooner we'll know exactly what steps need to be taken and what opportunities are most relevant. We have an asylum seeker who we know isn't eligible for one of the programs and isn't eligible yet for Department of Labor support. And so they need to apply to a VSAC fund in which we know they'll get denied, but then they'll be eligible for a scholarship that they can be recommended for. And so even if it doesn't seem like there's an abundance of resources for someone at first glance, make that referral, have them have that meeting, and from there, really, you know, we'll hopefully try to pass forward together. Jen.
Yeah, this is usually the moment when you or somebody, you know, gives the like kind of, you know, any door is the right door kind of spiel. You know, I mean, that's really kind of the purpose of this. This is not, we cannot be all expert in each other's programs. I think what we need to know is enough about each other's programs to know how and when to make a referral, know when to ask that question, and also know like when we are not experts, you know. So the question of like college and financial aid is a perfect one. You know, we understand higher ed is complex, choosing when, how, whether to take on debt, how to pay for it. And the main thing is that we're building these relationships down here to try to make sure that all the players know each other and to help make it easy for people to get referred into that sort of system to still make what is a very difficult set of choices, right? There is no easy. And so back to a different question, which was asked, which is sort of, you know, are we educating people about workplaces in the same way that there's many steps along the way when they first get here with the cultural orientation, when they first meet with the Amir Abdul, while they're applying for jobs, while they're starting their jobs, they are given ongoing orientation to the American workplace, but also the specifics of workplace. Same thing with higher education. It is a big learning curve, and all of us play a role in helping adjust people's understanding and expectations to a new set of conditions and choices that they have to make.
Yeah, and one example, you know, is that I mentioned this credential evaluation is that, you know, when the United States was in Afghanistan, you know, a lot of what we discussed culturally was the importance of education. And we encourage people to be more education is better, no matter what. And then there's a lot of folks who have degrees from institutions that aren't accredited, private institutions that popped up and then disappeared or no longer exist. And so evaluating those credentials has been really difficult. And then from moving on, you know, when folks come here, it's really hard to give them the credit for the hard work they may have already done. And so that is, you know, in some ways a promise that we weren't able to follow through on. And so it's difficult, you know, and it's difficult to have someone who's been a lawyer in Afghanistan and tell them that, you know, you can start over if you have the time and money. And so they are really difficult conversations that, again, no door is a wrong door, but we also all need to understand how we can support these pathways. And Jonathan, thank you so much for your comments. The public education system is, again, something that's above my expertise. And so that sounds like a great future topic we can add to an upcoming meeting, maybe our February meeting. Jonathan, great comment. And I think that's a great focus for a future meeting. Any questions or comments on workforce development? Anything you think we left out? Any burning questions? Great. What I do want to mention is that our January meeting will be the community consultation with ECDC, I believe, right, Joe?
Yes, it will be the community consultation. So 2 of the consultation folks will be at this meeting and 2 will be at the state level RIPSNet meeting. So January will be a community consultation here.
Great. And that is a quarterly meeting that all of the refugee organizations host. And it is where we talk about how things have been going, what are the future plans, what is going well, where are some gaps in resources to focus on, you name it. But you all as providers should consider attending. Some of you have to attend in one fashion or other. But I think again, it's really the quarterly touch point between our resettlement partners and you as providers, and it's a way to a great conversation.
I was just going to add, it's also the connection between community leaders. So some folks arrive on the call who aren't necessarily providers, but community leaders too. So it's a time for them to hear and share any feedback.
Yeah, so we will work on the invitation too, because there are folks here that should come to the consultation that are not in this meeting. So Alex and I will work on that and invite more folks in that meeting.
Yeah, great. So I hope everyone has a great end of their year and a great start to a new year. When you show up to this meeting in January, you will see more and new different faces. You're in the right meeting still, but the topic will be this quarterly consultation. So thanks again. Really appreciate everyone's attendance. And as always, this meeting recording will be posted up on that website. We'll have a great new year. Thanks, everyone.